You're listening to She's the Business podcast.
Awesome. So I'm here today with the lovely Jen Paterson, who's the founder of Dollar Divas. Welcome, Jen. So glad to have you here on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have this chat with you today. I think we literally just jumped on and I'm bursting with excitement because we don't talk about money enough, and I don't think we've covered it hardly at all on this podcast, and it's clearly like so important. We're here running businesses. Businesses are there to make money, and I guess at the primary aim of a business, otherwise it's a charity or maybe it's a hobby. So, it's such an important thing for us to talk about. And there's so much that I think goes on inside our heads. Even me saying that, some people will be like, oh, I'm not in business to make money. I'm here to make an impact. But before we dive into that, because I know that you have a lot to say on this topic and I really want to get into it, can you tell us a bit more just about what it is that you do with Dollar Divas? Who do you help? A bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started Dollar Divas about, 12 years ago now. And it all started as a way to get women talking about money. And, we were talking before we hit record that I really, really believe that more women should be talking about money. And let's bring these conversations out of the awkward, uncomfortable areas in our lives. Like we talk about everything else that is so intimate before we'll talk about money. And, money is so central to our lives and to our well-being and our security and our safety. Like, why are we not having these conversations? And so I started Dollar Divas originally as a way to get women out and having these conversations and learning about money in a way that was really low-key, unobtrusive, transparent and low pressure. And it just blossomed from there. I've been working now primarily with entrepreneurs and helping them manage their cash flow, helping them sort out how to pay themselves, how to build a business that really is financially stable, that also grows and evolves and changes as the needs of the owner or the owners or whatever grows and evolves and changes, and teaching them those skills, because really making money and managing money are two very different skill sets. And I find a lot of times in the business world, the focus is on the making money, which is amazing. Obviously, like you said, no, if you don't have revenue, you don't have a business. But at the same time, mismanaging your money can be just as detrimental to the health of a business in the long run. So that's what I teach, is the managing the money, making sure that it's all being intentionally used, strategically used, so that your business is not only serving your customers, but also serving the owners as well.
Yeah, amazing. That's so important, because I've heard many stories over the years of people in the seven-figure range even who aren't paying themselves, or like their business isn't profitable. They're spending more than what they're earning. And you kind of go, how is that even possible? Oh my God, in the $1 million range. What is going on? But it's the truth. It's reality, right? And so that just shows you this isn't something that a business that's small or brand new in their first year just trying to figure out how to manage the money. Like, this is actually something that you really need to get a serious handle on. Otherwise, imagine having that kind of cash flow coming in and also going straight back out again. That is frightening.
It's so common. And, people really do think that it's a new business owner problem, but it's not. The vast majority of the people that I work with are established business owners, and some who've been in business for more than a decade and have just been kind of like flying by the seat of their pants and scraping by and kind of winging it. And the stress of that comes with doing it like that is unbelievable. I mean, we all understand financial stress because we all deal with money, and we all, I'm sure, have had some sort of financial stress in our lives. But having that be your norm for an extended period of time is exhausting. And quite often, by the time somebody will come to me and they'll realize, okay, like, enough's enough, they figure out that someone like me exists and they're like, okay, please help me. They're just, one step away from burnout and deciding that they don't want to do this anymore. Not because they don't love their business, but because they're tired of that exhaustion that comes with the financial stress, the continuous financial stress.
Yes, yeah. And imagine making decisions from that kind of place as well every month, where you're actually just in fear of, well, I don't know what's going to happen next month. Am I going to be above the line or below the line? And yeah, and everything happening would just be attached with so much emotion, wouldn't it? And fear. And I just can't imagine how you can operate like that.
And I'm glad you brought up decision making, because it really is a big part of the puzzle, because so many businesses, because they're in that like walking a tightrope kind of situation, they will take on work or clients that they don't really feel aligned with, or bring them even more stress simply because they need to bring in that revenue, that they're so desperate that they sort of panic and hustle and bring in any dollars that will kind of help them keep the lights on, even if it doesn't necessarily align with them ethically or morally, or just doesn't sit right with them. But they do it anyway because they feel like they absolutely have to if they want to keep their business running. And, when you are in a financially stable position, you have the freedom and the power to say no, thank you to work that doesn't necessarily align with either how you want to run the business or who you want to be as a person.
Yeah, so true. And I think that whole situation, you're putting out fires constantly, or it's that knee-jerk reaction of like in the moment, oh, I need to bring this client on. But, what I've seen so often happen is if you can sort of deal with that risk or that fear of like, okay, I'm not going to say yes to them because they're not a great fit. What tends to happen, and I know I can't just say this happens all the time, but this is what I've seen happen anyway, is it just creates space for the right client to come in. And the number of times I've encouraged clients to be like, no, just set your boundaries, decide what is the right client for you, and we know which ones are right, which ones are profitable, which ones are going to not suck all your time and end up costing you money. Once we've defined that, and there are some sitting outside of it, it's like it's time to maybe say goodbye to some of these. And it's scary to do that, absolutely, especially because that maybe they are paying you. Sometimes they're not, to be fair. I know many that aren't, right? Or that they're chasing bills all the time. I'm like, you don't need that kind of thing in your life. And the funny thing is, when they get rid of them, it allows them to bring in the clients that are right. And they go, oh my God, I've just got the best client. I've just signed up. And I'm like, yes, because you created the space for it. Oh my goodness. And I think that's just the way that the world works. But we could go off on a whole tangent on that. I really wanted to ask you, why do you mentioned that they're flying by the seat of their pants, just going from moment to moment, and all of a sudden, oh my goodness, this has been going on for so long, help me. Why are people ignoring money? Like, what is it about it that you see? Why are we even getting into these situations? Like, what do you think is causing this?
It's a number of different factors. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by it. Oh, money can be a very overwhelming thing to tackle, especially when you're a business owner, because as a business owner, you have to be so much more savvy when it comes to your finances, because not only are you talking about your cash flow and your profits, you're also, responsible for taxes, and you're likely looking at sales taxes, and you may have staff. And so addressing the finances can be a very overwhelming topic. And even just finance in general is such an epic monster of a topic. Like, it's colossal, and you can study it your whole life and still only crack the surface of, what really you can learn when it comes to finance. So, that overwhelm tends to hold people back. And also, a lot of people feel like math and numbers just, they have flashbacks to high school algebra where it was somewhat traumatizing, and, they don't like to deal with it. It's not exciting or fun or sexy, and it's not that part of their business that they love to do. And so they sort of push it aside and say, well, I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later. I'll deal with it later, until it's no longer the case that you can put it aside and I'll deal with it later. And it's like, okay, you deal with this now or you're going to be out of business. And that's usually the catalyst to them going, okay, I really need to address this problem. Or they'll get a phone call saying that, you forgot about XYZ loan payment and now you're in arrears and now you've got all these extra fees and things like that. So like, usually it's just either overwhelm, or they're so focused on building their business that they think, I've got time. I can figure it out later. It's one of those things that I don't need to deal with right this second because it's not on fire until it is.
Absolutely. And what do you think makes it the topic that so many people, find so hard to talk about? Like, I totally get the non-sexiness. I was having flashbacks to, I actually liked maths at school, but when I went to university and I did accounting, oh my God, I don't know how many of those lectures I skipped because I was just like, you cannot bore me anymore. It was horrendous. So I was just like, I do not even care about this. What has it got to do with anything? I'm going to hire an accountant. Done.
Exactly. Yes. So, and you know what? That is a really common mindset of, oh, I'll just hire it out and it'll be fine. Someone else will take care of it, which, don't get me wrong, my accountant is an angel and I love her so much. And so are bookkeepers. Like, they are just absolutely wonderful, wonderful humans who do really important work. The issue that I struggle with the mindset of I'll just hire it out is when you are completely ignorant of what's going on and how it works. That's when you get into trouble. And I mean, I've heard time and time again of stories of my bookkeeper made a mess of my finances and now I owe the government XYZ dollars. My business manager ran off with, hundreds of thousands of dollars. All of these things that could have been prevented had the business owner kept their finger on the pulse and really had an understanding of what's going on. So I'm not suggesting that you have to do the work of tracking every receipt and every cent, and you can absolutely hire that stuff out because it's important and it's time consuming, and having someone who's an expert at it will only serve your business in the long run. But if you don't know the right questions to ask, if you don't know how to read those reports, if you don't know how to have those conversations and how to understand what they're telling you, then you're going to end up in trouble. And that's when, again, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you're dealing with putting out a fire that you may not even be familiar with. And so that's just going to make things all the more harder. So yes, okay, believe me, I sat through the boring accounting classes and the stats classes, and me and my cup of tea did our best to stay awake, especially in those unbelievably warm rooms. But there is some value. I'm not saying you have to be a trained accountant, but you do have to understand at least the basics of what they're communicating with you so that you don't end up in a situation where you're in hot water and your business is on the line and your livelihood is also on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. What I'm hearing in that is, an amount of financial literacy, just so that you're understanding what it is that you're looking at and that you've got your finger on the pulse of your own business, which kind of leads to the thing about responsibility. Like, are you actually taking responsibility for your business, or are you over here kind of doing the fun stuff and thinking it's just going to take care of itself? And, I'm hearing really strongly through what you're saying, hey guys, you do actually need to be responsible for your business. And that means, yes, we've got to talk about money. So, why are we avoiding talking about it? What makes it so hard? What do you see as the biggest issues that people are facing? The reason why they're not talking about it, it's not just because it's boring. I'm sure it's not boring at times. I'm sure they're loving it, right? But then they're not talking about it. So what do you think's going on there?
I think the biggest thing is that society shuns those who talk about money. It's rude to talk about money. It's, wanting to make a lot of money makes you greedy. And wanting to talk about money with your girlfriends, oh my gosh, like, you had much better talk about your sex life than your bank account. And you don't want to come across as entitled. You don't want to come across as thinking you're better than someone else because you make more than them. Or you don't want to come across as less than because you don't make as much as somebody else. Because, talking about money is just societally agreed upon that it's unacceptable. And it's, absolutely insane if you ask me. I think that the more we talk about it, the more we're all going to learn from each other, and, rising tides lift all boats.
Yeah.
And yet, because of all of this societal pressure to not talk about it, to feel like we have to have it figured out without anybody actually showing us the way. Like, we're expected to just be good with money instinctually. which is insane, like completely insane. But we are expected to have these skills without anyone talking about it and teaching us. And we're scared to bring it up because we don't want to seem like we're incompetent with money, or we don't want to seem like we're entitled, or that we feel like you don't want to make someone else feel like, you are better than them because of how you manage your finances, or because you make more, or because you're less than because you make less. Like it's all of this weird headspace that we've been raised around that is holding us back from having these conversations.
Yeah, I completely relate to that. I think my parents are definitely on the taboo camp, as in it was never talked about, very rude to bring it up. And, and it's just became this thing that, you always just ignore, or you're doing on your own. And
behind closed doors.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
This is private information. This is, you don't ask about people's money. You don't ask about what, how much is in their bank accounts. That's so rude. Why would you possibly, asking someone how much they paid for their house or their car? Like, oh my gosh, let me clutch my pearls. Like,
exactly.
it's so taboo. And yet it's something we all do and all deal with. And if we, again, it's not like showering, like even that we're taught how to, hopefully taught how to do it properly. And yet somehow with money, it's like, no. Like even parents won't discuss it in front of their kids because they don't want to like pass on stress to their children, or they don't want their kids knowing the ins and outs of their finances. And then the kids end up being adults who have no knowledge, who have no comprehension of how to make their way in the world. And they're just sort of, taught to go out and get a job, but they're not taught how to like build wealth, or how to invest, or how to, keep debt from getting out of control. And then, oh my gosh, like don't even get me started on credit cards. Like you hand an 18-year-old a credit card and it's like, woohoo, free money. I'm going, to go shopping. I'm going to go take my friends out to dinner, and I'm going to buy everyone a round of drinks. And, then they get the bill and it's shocking and they have no idea how to deal with it. And the cycle continues.
Yes, exactly. So many things I think we can get ourselves into hot water with not knowing about, basic literacy around that finance. Now, you're called an expert in the psychology of money. Do you want to explain a little bit about what that means? What is the psychology of money, and how does it help us when we understand it?
Psychology of money is not sort of the psychology of that piece of paper that's sitting on the desk. Like that's not what we're talking about here. It does not have a consciousness, so we're not talking about the actual money itself. But the psychology of money is based around the fact that it's linked to our survival. So it is directly linked to whether or not we can eat, sleep, be clothed, be comfortable, and be safe. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to the fact that money keeps us safe in our society. And so because it's directly linked to our safety and our survival, there's all of this baggage that comes along with it, these internal stories, these values and beliefs that we are raised on, that we see throughout society, that get deeply imprinted on our subconscious, that then reflect themselves in the way that we manage our money, the way that we interact with our money, and the way that we handle financial decisions. And all of that plays into where we are as adults within our financial lives. And understanding that you have a psychological connection to money is so important. People saying, well, like, I don't care about money, it's not important to me. There is still a relationship there. It's likely somebody who's saying, well, I don't care about money, it's not important to me, probably has a very negative relationship with money that stems back, into their childhood of someone, maybe prioritizing money over them, or maybe they saw somebody being really irresponsible with money and they just decided they didn't want anything to do with it from any point on. So like all of these things will show up over and over and over again in the way that we manage our own money, and being aware of it and being able to sort of look it in the eye and then address it and change it is really how you're going to make progress. You can apply strategies all day long, but unless you're dealing with the underlying motivation and how you are making decisions, you're not actually going to see any long-term change.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the basis around the psychology of how you handle money.
Yeah. I like that. And I think, it made me think a moment of, people that you hear who win lotto or something like that, like they come into money suddenly, but because then they lose it all, and they're like, why, how did you even lose it? But it's like, but they were, the kind of person that had never been able to hang on to money before. And they probably always thought, well, it's just because I don't have enough. But it's because, like you would say, well, what is behind that? Well, maybe it's one of these people that say, I don't like money. Therefore, whenever they get it, they get rid of it. And then they just got a great big amount. And so they just went to work getting rid of it like they always have done. And it's still in the same pattern. It's just repeating itself, just on a larger scale. And it's so interesting, isn't it, to kind of dive in and understand what it is. Some of the work that I did on my money mindset a few years ago, I was like, I realized that I'm a person that likes to hold on to it. So I was always the kid who, found it really easy to save and held on to it. But I was like, why have I got this thing about holding on to it? And, it actually came back to something totally not related to money, but a different experience I had as a kid where I thought if I let go of things, it was all going to go and never come back. And I just kind of, that had then translated into money. And I was like, oh my goodness, when I saw that and figured it out, wow, like what a change and a shift happened for me. But it's not like you can instantly go, now I'm cured. Now it's all gone. It's like,
if only.
You got to keep on. You got to work at it. Get rid of that deep-seated belief. But yes, it extends into your business because of course you are the person making the decisions in your business. And when those kind of undercurrent things are happening without you really realizing it, it's impacting how you make decisions, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I love your story because we all have a very similar story. I'm not saying that it's all, people who hold on to things, but these patterns that show up in our childhood will quite often repeat themselves into adulthood, whether we're consciously aware of them or not. So like one of my sort of stories was I was the youngest member of my whole family. So like cousins and then some by a few years. And so I was constantly being cared for. Who was looking after little Jenny? And they even called me little Jenny because we knew other Jens. So I was literally called little Jenny my whole childhood. And it was always who's taking care of little Jenny. And so that pattern then manifested itself into my adulthood where I felt like I always needed to be cared for. Like who's looking after me? And it took a little bit of like that hard look in the mirror and digging into my history and realizing like, I'm an adult now. I don't need to be cared for anymore. It's okay for me to go out and take care of myself and make my own money and make my own way in the world and have my own businesses that stand on their own 2 feet. I don't need to be cared for like I did when I was a child. And these patterns, they said, until you address them, like you did, which, is fantastic that you realized that was happening and you're repeating itself and addressed it head on, you will continue to repeat those over and over and over again.
Yeah. Oh, so great. I love to dive into them because I find it so interesting. I think just, how people, we don't even realize what we're doing, where it's come from and that not everybody's the same. I think that's the other thing.
No, everyone's got their own story, their own history. And, that's the thing I love about this is there is always a new story to hear. So whenever I start working with somebody, we dive into their history and their upbringing and how was money discussed in your household? How did your parents talk about money and all of this sort of thing? And everyone's got a different story to tell.
Yeah.
Because we've all been raised so differently. And so, it's fun for me because I sort of feel like a bit of a detective sometimes when I do work with clients because it's figuring out like where do we need to find it in their history? That's the thing that's holding them back. And sometimes it just takes having that conversation and, putting on the psychology hat rather than the strategist hat and saying, okay, like let's have a conversation and let's figure out what it is that's repeating over and over and over again in your life now. And like, where did that come from? And let's address, that elephant in the room, so to
Yes.
speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that you have many people, the whole money doesn't grow on trees. How many of
Oh,
our parents really said that? And it's the whole scarcity thing then. It's like, well, it doesn't grow on trees, therefore it's finite, therefore, I don't know. I think that's probably fuels a lot of people holding on to it and being afraid to give it. But I find it really interesting as well to dive into the fear around receiving it or the inability to receive. And like, whoa, it's like open a huge big can of worms there that I didn't really know existed. But, you know, thinking about the ability to receive money, can you talk a bit about that? Because I think as a business owner, you know, you kind of just expect, yeah, I can go out there and create a service and price it. But then if you've got this bottled up fear of receiving money, how does that end up manifesting in your business?
I have a fabulous story about that one, actually. So, I mean, first of all, yeah, I mean, money doesn't grow on trees. Money's the root of all evil. All of these things make, money is greed and all of this. And you talk about, especially when I was sort of in my university days, that was the whole, 1%, Occupy Wall Street. Like it was all like money is bad. And so, having to wrap my head around the fact that it wasn't actually money that was the issue. It was the people controlling the money that really were the problem.
Yeah.
And being okay with wanting to be really wealthy and feeling like I can ask to be paid and I can invoice people. And what happens, I find this over and over and over again, is my clients who are afraid to raise their prices. I mean, oh my gosh, let me talk how many people I've handheld through the raising prices conversation is like unbelievable. And it's always women. Always women, because we're taught to be givers, we're taught to be nurturers, we're not taught to receive money.
Yeah.
So that's usually a big one. And I even have people who like would have physical reactions to just sending an invoice. So I had one client who came to me and I sent her off with some homework and she came back the next week and she said, "Oh my gosh, you'll never guess what I found." And I said, "What's happening?" And she goes, "I have been working for a client that I was unaware of, that I forgot to invoice for the last 9 months." 9 months.
Ouch.
Yeah. So of course, then there's the whole conversation of how do I handle this? What do I say? How do I, have the conversation? Do I try and get that 9 months back? Do I discount it? Like, oh, it was a whole thing. And underneath it all, it really came from her feeling like she didn't deserve to be paid, that because what she did, she felt was easy for her. She said, "But this is so easy for me. This is like, I can do it so quickly and without a whole lot of fuss. So like, where's the value?" And I said, "Well, the value is in the fact that whoever you're working with does not feel the same way about the work that you do. It's easy for you because of who you are and your unique gifts, but it is not easy for your clients. Like for them, they really struggle with this type of work. And so for them, the value is having you take care of it for them so they don't have to, because it's just not something that they're good at. And you can do it in an hour, whereas for them, it would take them 5 or 6. So there's tons of value there. You just don't see it because it's always been easy for you. And because you're so afraid of money and feeling like you're worthwhile and you're worthy, that's what's holding you back from sending those invoices." And so, we dug into that and oh man, like it took us, it did take some time, but like we were able to kind of battle through that because again, we were able to address it head on. But it's so common. I see people have like physical reactions, like they're feeling sick to their stomach. They get their throat gets tight. If they have those conversations with clients about, wanting to, like you said, even just send an invoice that has already been discussed. They're scared because they feel like, someone's going to judge them. They're going to be unhappy with their work. They're not going to want to pay. It's just such a common problem.
Yeah, I think it feels like, even though it's not logically, but it feels like you're asking for money. but it's not, you're not asking for money, you're making an exchange, and the exchange is money is the energy they're giving you, and you're giving back something else. And that's just the currency of our world and how it passes between. But it is weird, isn't it? And I realize, like, now it's funny because as you're talking, I'm like, when I set up my business, I think the whole idea of sending invoices I hated so much. I set it up so people pay up front, like there just is no work until like the invoice is paid, and then I never have to send one. I never have to chase them up. And that was I think, actually sounds like a smart strategy. And yes, I do believe in that. But partly, I think it was because I was afraid of sending invoices and didn't want to be in that situation. So I just went, I know a way of avoiding it. I'm going to not do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And,
cool.
and it's one of the reasons why women don't ask for raises. People outside the entrepreneurial world, they're terrified to ask for raises. They're terrified to have those conversations with their bosses or their clientele because, again, we're taught not to do those things, that doing those things makes you look greedy or selfish or, I don't know, entitled. And these are all really, really bad things that you don't want to be seen as. You want to be seen as a giver, a nurturer. And
I think that whole conversation around greediness, and I see it often. I see it, literally just this week on Threads, and there are people posting posts and comments and talking about people who dare to charge X amount. I'm like, if you've got an issue or you're feeling triggered by what someone else is charging, that is on you, not on them. It means nothing about them. That's actually it's really an opportunity to look at, why are you feeling triggered about it? What is that really, where is that coming from within you? Because you're the one having the reaction there, and they are charging whatever they want to, and there are people out there who are paying that. So what? That's their thing, and why should anyone else have an issue with it? I find it so interesting, and I think it's this whole thing around the greed, and like you said, the Wall Street, you just instantly, I was watching it just this week, the movie called The Great Short, about the whole
that's
GFC.
A good one. I love that movie.
Very fascinating. But, you watch that stuff and instantly you're like, the big banks and the Wall Street, and they're making all this money, and it's greedy, and this. Like you said, it's not money that makes a person greedy. It's a greedy person who has money, and then it's just amplified. The more money they have, the more greedy they seem. But we kind of forget to look around and see people who do have money who are not greedy, and who are really amazing with the money that they have and how much they give and support. It's like, if you had the money, what sort of person would you be with it? Would you be the greedy person, or would you be the person who is supporting some stuff that you really believe in? What would you do with it? And I think when you start to ask yourself that question, you realize, well, hang on, the more I make, the more impact I can have, because I can use that money to help more people and actually support more things, even way outside of my business, support charities. I'm really passionate about girls in, developing countries, third world countries, actually getting education so that they're not reliant on living like a bottom feeder in society, actually being able to make their own life. I'm so passionate about that. So for me, it's like when my business is at that point where I'm really able to be expanding my impact way beyond even my community and what's happening, that is where it's going to, because I really strongly believe in it, and all you have to do is ask yourself that, well, what kind of person will you be with it? You're not going to suddenly turn into someone you're not, are you?
No. And I always liken, people, they will go to that place of the money and the greed and the big banks. And I always sort of think of the Wolf of Wall Street kind of style, just excess for excess's sake. And yet it's not the money that creates that. Money is actually neutral. It's just a tool. And it's no different than a kitchen knife. You think of a kitchen knife, and when it's just sitting on a counter, it's just there, it's a knife. And people don't generally have a lot of baggage around this knife just sitting on the counter. It's just a knife, okay.
Yeah.
And yet it depends on who picks it up. If somebody who's a Michelin star chef picks it up, they're going to create beauty. They're going to create things that taste amazing and look amazing and are fabulous and wonderful. But if a sociopath picks it up or a psychopath picks it up, serial killer kind of thing, and they're going to create mayhem. It's not the knife that's creating either the beauty or the mayhem. It's the hands of the person it's in. And like you said, who you are with the money is up to you. So are you going to create beauty or are you going to create mayhem? That's really the ball's in your court. And if you have more, you do have more to give towards the things that are important to you. Just last week, I was having a conversation with a client, and she was saying that, she wanted to raise her rates, but she felt really apprehensive about it and felt, I said, well, do you feel a bit of guilt as well? And she said, well, yeah, I'd really like to be accessible to people who are lower income. And I said, well, okay, that's, first of all, it's a wonderful thing to want. But here's the issue is if all you're doing is pushing yourself to be accessible, then in order for you to make a living that's comfortable and allows you to continue to buy food and keep the roof over your head, how much work are you going to have to take on? And does that lead you to burning out and being able to serve nobody? And she sort of thought about that and okay, that makes sense. And I said, what would it look like if you raised your rates and charged what you're worth and where the value is, and then donated some pro bono work to be accessible? Are you going to help everybody? No, but nobody can help everybody. But what you are going to do is you're going to create a sustainable business that allows you to have the mental capacity, the time capacity to serve people in a way that feels good to you for the long term, not just for a year or two while your sanity holds out. So, right? Like,
totally.
I see this all the time of entrepreneurs, particularly newer entrepreneurs who desperately want to be accessible and, feel guilty for charging a premium for their work, but it's not sustainable. And they burn themselves out because they're trying to do everything for everyone rather than creating a business model. They're charging a premium for the people who can afford it and then offering pro bono work or scholarships or whatever that suits them, that allows them to yet be accessible to those who need it as well.
Totally. Oh, I love that you said that, because I have exactly the same conversations with my clients. I help them create, really high ticket offerings, not super high, just high ticket as in it's not bargain basement, it's not crazy cheap, but it's value, because everyone I work with usually are mums. We're trying to balance life with families, we're trying to have a business, and we don't want to burn ourselves into the ground, and probably if you're a little bit like me, we kind of want a bit of time for ourselves, maybe to do some exercise, maybe to travel. Okay. Oh my God. Go to the shops every now and then, like allow yourself that,
be a person.
Just be a person, live life, actually live this one life that we get, right? We don't get another chance. And the older that you get, the more you kind of get really aware of that and like, well, hey, I don't want to suddenly be, retirement age or older and be thinking about all the things I haven't done. What? Simply because I've been prioritizing work and not doing anything else. That's horrifying. And it's just like, there's so much in that, is that charging you a rate that is worthwhile for your business and it is of value. Doesn't mean that you're greedy. It doesn't mean you're charging something over and above what you should be. It's actually just normally helping people to rise up to where they should be. I have some clients who've been working for free because they feel so guilty and like they should help people. And I'm like, yes, helping people you can. And that's also what your free content is for. Are you doing any social media? Do you write blogs? Do you do podcasts? Guess what? Someone can't afford you, they are more than able to consume all of your free stuff, and when they are ready, when they have the ability to pay for your services, then they can. But you're not excluding them. They're just not quite ready yet. They're not at that place where you are. And I think as soon as people realize they are giving something for people, because they usually are doing some form of free content, it's like, okay, now I feel better about it. I'm not excluding anyone or leaving anyone behind, but I've got different offerings. And people need to, if it's a one-for-one service, that is premium. That is your absolute premium time. Like, you need to be valuing that appropriately. Absolutely. And not thinking that you shouldn't just because you need to be affordable for everyone. And I'm always like, what is affordable? Literally, you could probably try to sell something for $7, $10, and someone will say that's too expensive. So what are you going to charge for it? Like, you literally cannot have something that you're like, this is affordable for everyone. And there will be someone who wants to refund it, guaranteed, no matter what price you put on it. Yep. And yeah, I know that we could talk about this forever. I've had a client who couldn't even sell a free service. She's like, why? It's free. I'm like, because it's not about the price. Like, it's about your offering, your strategy. That's what we need to look at. Stop trying to think, I just need to lower the price and be free or more affordable so people will buy it. It's like, that's not what the decision is on. It's, let's look at actually what it is that you're offering, and it is a fit for who you're offering it to. And the price actually can help you to attract the right people, because how often do you think, well, if something's too cheap, do you even trust it? Do you trust that it's
absolutely
quality?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if someone's, offering me something for free, and it's like, well, why?
Yeah, why? I'm not sure.
Why?
So what are some of the actions that you think we should take to, better manage our finances and achieve better financial stability? Is there anything that comes to mind that's sort of a standout? I know, big question.
It is a huge question, but honestly, whenever people ask me, like, what's the thing that they can do to better their finances, pay attention. Just pay attention. It sounds very simple, but it is the honest to God truth that if you pay attention, your finances will improve no matter what situation you're in. I don't care if you're a brand new entrepreneur. I don't care if you've been at it for 10 years. If you pay attention, your money situation will improve, because what we focus on grows. So what I always tell anyone who will listen is, if you're not spending an hour a week with your finances, you're doing yourself a disservice. It's very much like our health. If you sat on the couch, didn't pay attention to what you eat, didn't pay attention to your exercise, chances are you're not a healthy person, and your body's not going to be there to help you live your life. When you try and do something, your body's going to be like, no, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention to your body in the same way that you have to pay attention to your finances. If you just don't do anything and ignore it all and, sort of put out fires, and that's your money management strategy, then it's not going to be there to serve you when you need it. So take an hour a week, put it in your calendar, in the same way you would like a client meeting or a doctor's appointment, something you would not blow off, picking your kids up from school. Like, all of these things that we do and we don't ever blow them off, give the same courtesy to your finances. Take an hour, and if you're like, oh, okay, I've got an hour, now what do I do? Just start looking through your statements. Start looking through the transactions. What's going in? What's coming out? Am I paying for a subscription that I've had for, 6 months that I wasn't aware of? Just last week, I had a client come back to me and said, I have 2 Netflix accounts. Why am I paying for 2 Netflix accounts? And I said, wow. I have no idea. That's a you question.
Yeah.
But, just by taking some time and looking through the statements, because things like that can slip through so easily, and it's just money gone into the ether. And so take some time, pay attention, see what's going in, coming out, make sure that you're, if you are invoicing, making sure those are up to date, making sure there's nothing standing that's, 5, 6, 7 months old, things like that, making sure that all your payments, all your bills are getting paid on a weekly basis, because we generally are billed on a monthly cycle. So if you're looking at it weekly, you're never going to miss anything. You're never going to be behind. You're never going to go, oh, shoot, I forgot to pay this, very important bill.
Yeah.
Just look at it.
I love that. I know that just sounds so simple, but you're so right. What you put your attention on is what grows. And I think, I was just thinking, I don't know, embarrassing story as well, but because you think, why did we even get into this situation? But not looking at our account, we found that my son had been playing a game on my husband's phone, and there was no payment filter on it. And so he'd just been, he didn't know, he's 9. So he's like, yeah, I want that, or yep. And he's clicking the buttons. He's probably not even reading what it's saying. And there goes $1,500 on our credit card. And then we thought we'd turned it off, and it happened again because it was on another phone. Apparently, the Android ones don't lock it down centrally. You've got to lock it per device. Who knew? We learned that lesson again. Oh, my God. And, when I think the first time we noticed it, we tried to get a refund, and whatever app it was did refund us a couple of $100, but we did not get refunded the thousands of dollars that my son spent. And he still really has no idea what that was worth. And that is, for me, that is the lesson of not paying attention. So yes, pay attention.
Please pay attention.
I've tried to make my Mondays. I'm like, right, I'm calling it Money Monday. Monday is my money day. That is when I'm going to just dive in, look at the bank account, look at what's happening, what's where, and just check it all out. It doesn't have to take,
you said. And it's a great time to gather your receipts, making sure that you've got all that, especially again, as a business owner. And, we talk about bookkeeping, and, I'm not a bookkeeper and I don't pretend to be, but I can tell you right now, when I pull receipts on a weekly basis and go through them and allocate them and put them where they need to be, I'm much more on top of it than even if I do it on a monthly basis, because sometimes I'll look at a receipt that happened 20 some odd days ago and I'll think, what was this? What did I buy? And especially I remember I've got another business where we do alternative foods. And so we buy a lot of ingredients and things like that. And I had a Walmart receipt, and everything is in shortened little codes. It's not written out in what it was. It was this random, basically just a bunch of letters. And I'm looking at this going, what the heck did I buy? Yeah. Is this butter? Is it, bags? I have no idea. Not a clue. Goodness. And so, I can remember what I did 6 days ago. I can't remember what I did last week. That's gone.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think you kind of have that thought in your head about how much money you have as well. And you forget the little payment here and the payment there, because it's just sort of that's just a moment that happened and I paid that. And then, but I've still got this thought of an idea in my head about how much money is in the bank, and you kind of forget to adjust it every time you're doing something. So,
and especially with the days of our auto withdrawals. Everything's on auto withdrawal now, which on one hand can be really handy because then you don't miss payments. But then on the other hand, thinking that you are further ahead than you actually are, and then you make a spending decision and it's oops, I didn't actually have that money. Yeah. And now this thing that I need to go through is going to bounce, or, you get the dreaded decline on, when you go to spend the money, and it's well, what's happening? I thought there was cash here. Oh no, where there isn't, paying attention is so, so vital. And I'm glad you brought that up, because the other thing that I always recommend is having more than one account that's there to support your business. So, first of all, if you're having your business and your personal working in the same accounts, that has got to stop. That is just a recipe for disaster. So whether you are a full-time business owner or a side hustler, I don't care. Have separate accounts for your business and your personal. That's absolutely must have.
Yeah. Otherwise, tax time comes and you're good luck. Sit down for a week or a month and try to figure out which is which. And oh my goodness.
Gray hairs, wrinkles, all of it. It's just a mess. Don't do it. Save yourself the heartache and the headache and the stress and all of that time, right? All that time trying to weed through the mess. So just don't do it. But even within your business, having multiple accounts that each do different jobs and support your business in a different way, because it can be really difficult to keep track of all of these little details and these little things, we're talking about being a mom and a business owner and a person. It's a lot to keep in your head, and most people just can't do it all, and you shouldn't have to. That's ridiculous. And so using a multiple account system, it makes it really, really easy and very user friendly and very intuitive to manage your finances, because you just look at your online banking and it says it there in black and white what the dollars are there and what they're there to do. So whether you're got money sitting in a different account for taxes, emergencies, operating expenses, your paycheck, these can all be separated out, making it so much easier to handle all those day-to-day nitty-gritties. It just makes such a difference.
Oh, that sounds so good. And I think it's stopping that double counting where you're like, yeah, I've got this much money, I could do this. And then, the next day you're thinking, oh, I'll do something else. And again, thinking that you've got that same amount of money. So you're effectively kind of counting on it twice for two totally different things. And I speak from
it doesn't multiply on its own.
I do that kind of thing. And then, usually it all works. I keep a good handle on things and always pay all credit cards at the end of every month. But I think it's that whole, what's going on in your head. And I definitely catch myself going, oh no, I already had thought of using that money for something else. Like I can't use it again for this. Like it's only there once. So something else needs to come in order to make that happen.
Oh, absolutely. And it can be very, like, especially as like your business grows and evolves and changes and becomes more complicated, handling it like that, just inevitably something is going to give at some point. It's going to create a situation where maybe that week you're tired, you're stressed, you're focused on other things, and you do that to yourself and you think, oh, well, I've already paid that, or I'm going to put this money towards this coach, or I'm going to expand in this way, but it's already been promised to this other thing. And then chaos ensues. So I'm a big believer that you can create systems that support you and make your life easier. And anything that I can do, I'm actually a very lazy person. And so anything I can do to make my life easier, I'm going to do it because I don't want to have to worry and second guess and wake up at 3:00 in the morning going, did I pay that person?
Totally.
Not that I speak from experience or anything.
Yeah. I love that. That is so useful. Paying attention and having multiple accounts, definitely keeping business and personal separate. I think those are just some absolute fundamentals, but things that, we shouldn't be thinking no one should, if you're already 10 years into business and you're not doing them, like start now. There's no time that's too late, right? Like,
no,
let's
absolutely
get it all
absolutely not. The best time to do it is yesterday. The second best time is today.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Jen. Where can people find you online? Like, where do you like to hang out? What's your social media platform if anyone wants to come and hang out and learn a bit more from you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at jenpaterson.biz. That's JenPaterson.biz. So I'm on Instagram most days, usually sharing some crazy tip or just a little insight into my insane life and talking about money and money mindset and some strategies. That's all there. Or you can check out my website, dollardivas.org. I've got some really fun freebies on there. And then Friday mornings, Pacific time, I host a free money power hour. So that's a just open Zoom chat. You're welcome to come and join me, ask questions, get some accountability, or just hang out and do your power hour alongside with me.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. What a cool thing to do and to offer to people, just to be able to, check in and ask some questions. I think that's so generous of you. So thank you. I'll make sure that's all in the show notes. So if you are on your phone right now and you want to scroll down, you can tap through and connect with Jen on Instagram and find out a bit more about her Money Power Hour. That sounds really cool on Dollar Divas. So thank you, Jen. It's been such a pleasure. I know there were so many things we can talk about with this, and we've only really scratched the surface, but I think it's been an awesome conversation to have today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. You're right. It just barely scratched the surface, but I think we got some good points in there, and hopefully your listeners can take it and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, and we'll definitely chat soon.